I was surprised at how much I really liked Thracia, but there was just something about it that resonated with me. In case you don't know, this is actually a midquel, meaning it's set in the middle of a previous established story of Genealogy of the Holy War, which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing, focusing on Prince Leif, or Leif as his contemporary pronounced. Special shout out to the fan translation team. Thank you so much for your hard work. This is unfortunately the only way to play it in English for now. From the get-go, this should not have worked. I don't think I've ever seen a midquel that really worked, or prequel, anything like that, because you already know what's gonna happen. But they really managed to establish Leif and his army, and just how fucking against the odds everything were. It assumes that you've played Genealogy, so it doesn't really shy away from spoilers from that game, but I'll try to keep things vague just in case you never played either. I really do like this game, but let's just say I'm glad it's not my first Fire Emblem game. Because it's very unforgiving. One simple mistake and you're dead, because the enemies are very strong, especially early on. You don't have that many resources to work with, and as I said, the world is just against you, which is probably why it feels so good once you actually have a few strong units, and can trivialize most of the combat or get a really good staff user to warp you here and there and murder everything. It's supposed to be an underdog story, and it really works. Because yes, this game is really difficult, but if you're smart, or take advantage of certain opportunities, it'll be so much easier. For example, it has an arena. Yes, if you die in the arena, you die forever, unlike in Genealogy. But when it works, and you actually get decently strong, it's not that hard to steamroll the rest. There's also what they call combat manual, which will teach skills to certain characters. And most of them are pretty impactful. You can also find scrolls that impact your growth rates, like even 30% extra in skill for example. And holding one of these scrolls makes sure that your character cannot be critted. And if there's anything this franchise like is randomly deciding that you're dead. It's like, oh cool, 1% crit and I died. Not as long as you have any of these scrolls. To address some of my legit criticisms though, most of the time, yeah, it's genuinely unfair. Like having units across the maps that snipe you with ballistas or magic, fog of war everywhere so you can't do anything about it. It's just flat out not fun to me. Which is why I really put a lot of effort into growing my units as strong as they possibly could. And pray a bit to RNGs that they dodge everything, but even then they die eventually. You may notice that I'm using very mundane footage, but it's because I do think that this game has a good story and it should be experienced, but only if you played the previous game. I don't think it's mind-blowing, but they do really try to make this story seem grand in scope, how this one guy is trying to get his country back more or less, parallel to what's happening in an even bigger story. The villains aren't always the best, but they do manage to create some rivalry and make them really feel like a threat, as well as give some personal stakes in there. They do try to make Leif a bit more developed. He's not an amazing character, but I do appreciate that they tried. He makes a few mistakes in the story and he has to pay for it, and he tries to owe up to his mistakes. Stuff like that is always appreciated. Especially main characters. Stories like this are usually seen as an unstoppable force that's always right and always saves the day with little to no effort, let alone sacrifice. Another criticism is that it has a huge cast of characters that barely say or do anything, but it's just the game's age, sadly. Genealogy kind of had this too. Looking at their designs, they're just so full of life and personality, but I never get to experience that because they barely even talk. They have like a few conversations at the very end of the game. Had the game been released today, it would have had thousands of more lines. Unfortunately, we do get to know them a bit better in spin-offs like Heroes, which is cool that people still remember this game, and then does have some memorable characters here for sure. There's one that joins you about halfway through the game, who is very conflicted and sees the evil that the Empire does firsthand despite being part of it, and has a really good scene where they're included. I'm like, I want to know more about this character. This is such a good opportunity for storytelling. And then the character just vanishes, pretty much. There's plenty of that in the game. Although for its time and for what I got, it's honestly not bad. I just really wish there was more. In a good way. There's also a few cameos that more or less boils down to, hey, I was in genealogy, bye! But they try to tie it into something. Like, there's one, I'm not gonna say who, that like meets up with another character, like, oh, cool, you're here. And she's like, yeah, I'm just about to head off into battle for this thing that happened in genealogy at the same time. But you can have this in the meantime, and you get a weapon for it. Shit like that. It feels tasteful, so to say. Like they try to give them a purpose instead of just remind you that they exist or, hey, this takes place in the same universe as genealogy. That, and it is just fun just to see them again. And as always, Yuka Sugiyoko is a great composer, sorry for butchering your name, and brings some really good material to this title. One of my favorites is actually the theme that's used for when you're just setting up the game. Can't quite put my finger on it, but it's like it fills me with anticipation, like I'm about to tackle a great challenge and do even greater things. And just good background music when I'm thinking about what units to use. There's plenty more highlights in the soundtrack, of course. One thing that's interesting is that there's a new stat called Constitution. If it's higher than your opponent, you can choose to capture them, in which case you have all your stats, then you attack them, and if you manage to kill them, you fucking joink them! It'll always look a bit funny to me. It's like, oh, your constitution's lower than mine? Yoink! Now you can take their shit, trade their items. Your stats are still halved until you release them. We can always trade the hostage with another unit, and this is mostly the way that you're gonna get items in this game. I much prefer to have guaranteed drops after you kill an enemy, and giving me a shit ton of gold so I can spend on a shop. But this is interesting, and I think it works in this game. I don't think I'd like to see this again or anything, but it was a fun little experiment. Because the enemies can capture your units as well. If a unit doesn't have any weapon equipped, they'll be captured automatically. Which means you can put a unit in the enemy's way, remove all their shit, and they'll just walk up, capture them, and now they have half their stats, so it'll be easier to beat. It's stuff like that I really like about this game. There is genuine tactics here and there, and many ways to cheese things. So despite being brutally damn difficult, especially early on, fuck the 4th chapter by the way, but they give you so much power if you use it correctly. I am not a master tactician by any means, and the only old school Fire Emblem game I played before this was Genealogy, and I managed mostly fine. Not because I'm smart, but because I'm opportunistic. Oh, there's an arena? I guess I'll grind. Oh, this unit has a really powerful weapon? I guess I'll capture them. Stuff like that. If I can do it, then so can you. Once you get over the early chapters, which are really damn unforgiving. There were many times where I looked over the map and saw the enemies and were like, how the fuck? There's so goddamn many. And then less than 10 turns in, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm fucking awesome, they just die. As I'll keep saying, my point is not to convince anyone to play Thracia, just to tell people how I feel about something and present it in an entertaining way, so people will understand where I'm coming from. So I'm not gonna tell you to go play Thracia, because it does have a lot of things going against it, and it will probably not resonate with everyone. But I will say that I, and someone who's not great at strategy RPGs, not only took on what's regarded as the hardest Fire Emblem game, but did so with a smile. I think this game is worth experiencing. Even if it's not as good as Genealogy, it is a good experience. Once it clicks, it feels great. All I can really say is I enjoyed my time with Thracia. It really mirrored Leaf's journey, starting out as a random nobody, with basically every town and every country going against you, but slowly building up and becoming next to unstoppable. Not the best game ever made, but it's not trying to be. It's just trying to flesh out an already huge world, and it does so really well. And I really enjoy my time in this world even more now. I really wish there was a third game. I don't think this will ever get a remake, but I'd be very happy if they at the very least did a modern port of some sort. In English, I mean. It has sold the least amount of copies of any Fire Emblem game thus far, so they probably feel very little reason to remake it, even if they remade Genealogy. But I don't want this game to become completely forgotten, because it is good and really fun once it works. Yes, it can be very bullshit, but it's not that hard. I suppose the game's reputation kind of mirrors the main protagonists. The game really feels like it's a random nobody or a small game in a franchise of many more successful titles, but still kicking it. I would love for nothing more than for this game to get a bit more recognition, because it may not be perfect, but I think it sure as hell deserves to live on.